Hey friends, so in the last video we talked about continuous integration, and this is another video of my DevOps series where we learn some fundamental concepts of DevOps. So welcome to the third part of the video where I'll be demonstrating what continuous delivery or continuous deployment is, which stands for CD. So we already saw in the last part where we were using GitHub Actions for our CI server. So if any of the changes were being merged to our main branch in the repo that we had hosted on GitHub, it would run some tests to see if those changes are compatible or not, and we would get a status of fail or pass. And the next step in the pipeline during a software development lifecycle is to deploy those changes to either a QA environment or a staging environment where we could test our changes live. So moving on to continuous delivery or continuous deployment, I use the same Python app like in the previous video. So we have a test Python app here and we already know the code. So we have our app.py file, which basically returns a hello YouTube. And this is Flask, so it'll give us a web app saying hello YouTube. And if we look at GitHub workflows now, I've added a main Flask app -reshub.yaml. So if we look at that file, and I can show it in Visual Studio Code here. So this action on GitHub Actions is responsible for deploying our Python web app to an environment. It could be staging, it could be QA, it could be production, it could be development. Usually what happens is you have continuous delivery setup or continuous deployment setup for a development environment where QA engineers and other developers can test their changes out before it goes to production. And you can also automate the testing part of it to some extent. And yeah, so here you can see we are using our main branch. So from our previous continuous integration step where the changes get merged, after those changes are merged, we'll move on to this workflow in GitHub Actions. And you can see it runs on Ubuntu latest container image. And then we define some steps. So we have the setup Python version as the first step, just so that we know the app that we have written, it doesn't have any complexities when it comes to using different version of Python. So I've defined 3.8 just to be on the safe side. And then we also have our virtual environment setup. So here I'm setting up the virtual environment and we are also activating that virtual environment. And then our next step is to install dependencies. So just like how we did in the previous video, we are installing the Python dependencies using pip and then requirements.txt file, which I have here. So we only have Flask. Moving on, you could also add tests here. As you can see, I've made a comment saying optional add step to run tests here, right? But we already did that in our CI step, so we won't be doing that. And you can see after it creates or builds the Python app, the next step is to upload the artifacts. And now the next major step would be deploy. So this is also running on Ubuntu latest container image. It needs build step to run. So this entire block of code is build. And then it needs that to run successfully first, only then deploy will run. And then we have the environment. For me, because it's just a test app only made for the purpose of this video, I named it production. And then we have some environment variables, and you can also see here Azure App Service publish profile. So if you want to read more about how Azure App Service GitHub action works, I'll link the document below. But yeah, moving on, we download the artifact that was built in the build step previously, and we deploy it to our Azure web app. So you can see the app name is named Flask App Reshub in Azure, and the slot name is production. And then we use the environment variable, which is a secret you can store on GitHub. So it needs this environment variable to be able to connect my GitHub action to the Azure App Service. And if we look at the action itself, you can see this one was our previous GitHub action, which does the continuous integration part. And this one is the continuous deployment part. So if you look at the latest one, you can see we have two stages. One is build and the other one is deploy. The build just goes through and gets us the artifacts, which is our Python app. And you can see it does the same things that I already showed you. So pip install, upload the artifacts, right? And if you go back, look at the deploy step, you would see that it deploys it to Azure Web App, and it also gives us the application URL. So if you open that in a new tab, you can see it says Hello YouTube, which is what we made. And here you can see Flask App Rishabh in Azure. So basically we have connected our repo where we do some testing as part of the continuous integration. And if any branches or changes need to be merged to main, that would have to go through our CI step that we have so that no breaking changes get merged. And then we have the continuous deployment part of things where we, after testing those changes and after merging them to the main branch, we get it to deploy to the Azure App Service. But yeah, that is continuous deployment. I hope you guys liked the video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel because I'll be doing more of these. The next one I think I'll be doing is on IAC, which stands for Infrastructure as Code. But yeah, make sure you share and like the video, and thank you for watching.